Hello, everyone. Nigel here with Polluted Mainstream. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite allegories from the Bible, which is the Garden of Eden. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I think it's really relevant to any time, really, but especially our time that we're living in now. But before I launch into that, I want to thank everyone who's been watching my videos lately. It's cool to know that you guys are watching those, and I want to thank everybody who's following me on Twitter too. I'm guessing you guys are the same people, but if not, hey, thanks to both groups of people. And if you guys want me to do a video on a particular topic, you can leave it in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. But anyway, to launch into the Garden of Eden, again, it's one of my favorite allegories from the Bible. I think it's one that gets overlooked, and I wanted to talk about the symbolism in it because I think it's really relevant to the state of our nation today. So what happens in the Garden of Eden story? Well, first, Adam and Eve are living there. They sort of wake up there, skipping a little bit, but they basically wake up in the Garden of Eden, and they find themselves being nourished by the tree of life amongst all the other animals and plants in the world. So what does that equate to? What if we take that symbol and try to put it into a real life context? Well, man waking up in the Garden of Eden, to me, sounds a lot like man becoming self-aware. Before we were just animals, and then we became self-aware, and that was the birth of humanity. That was the birth of us being sort of a divine being, because we were able to reflect on ourselves. So we become self-aware, and we find ourselves being nourished by the tree of life. And what does that mean? Well, I think that means that the tree of life is the traditional way that we've always survived. It's the things that we do to best procreate ourselves, best survive in the natural world. So man at first was in harmony with nature, doing things in that way which were most harmonious with nature, that allowed us to be the most successful in the context of being in harmony with nature. So then what happens? After that, the snake comes into the garden and tells man that there is the fruit of the tree of knowledge that he can eat. And then if he eats that, he'll become like God. So what does the snake symbolize? Well, so in ancient cultures, ancient tribes, you had people who knew no other way of life than their tribal way of life. And then you might have had a civilizational interloper, like maybe an outsider or an outside group that came amongst them and told them of other ways of life. Maybe they introduced to them materialism. Maybe they introduced to them sexual libertine ideas. And also the tree of knowledge is called the knowledge of, the full name of the tree is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So they might have showed them things that they considered good, like, yes, like I said, materialism, how to do agriculture, and how to lift themselves above mere subsistence living or mere survival. And so they would have considered those things good because they, gave them pleasure, or they gave them increased ability to procreate themselves. And then they also gave him the tree also gave him knowledge of evil, which would be, in my mind, guilt, because when they eat the fruit, then they see themselves as being naked. So now they have guilt. So this civilizational interloper, let's say that they're the ancient version of a globalist, comes in and shows them good things, things that give them pleasure, things that give them increased ability to compete, and then they show them guilt also. So that would maybe be, well, you've killed this other tribe over here, or you outcompeted them and now they're dying, or, you're doing these things that you should feel guilty about. And so, yes, man became like God in a certain way, in that he was no longer his animal self or his just pure innocent human self, but had this knowledge that now he was able to choose, or had to choose, between being the way he had been or being the new way that that he hadn't been, but would maybe lead to good things, but he wasn't sure. It's like stepping into the unknown. So that's how I interpret that. So then, of course, man eats of the tree of knowledge, which was always inevitable, by the way. It was always going to happen, and becomes kicked out of the Garden of Eden. God says at that point, you'll now have to toil for your for your living. You'll now have to eat bread, and your mouth will be filled with dust or some such thing like that, and you'll have to work hard for the rest of your days. Childbirth will be painful, so on and so on. So how do I interpret that is that before, it's not that life was great for man before. It's not that it was easier, but it's just they knew no other way. And so to them, it was the supreme way. There was no other way, and that's just the way it was. So they were happy. They didn't have any guilt. They didn't wonder about whether they are doing the right thing. But now you have knowledge of the things that are possible. And so you have to wonder, am I doing the right thing? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I deny myself this pleasure? Should I take this action? So life became hard. Man had to toil. And before, let's say the tribe was dying out because of a drought or, environmental conditions, man didn't have to feel any kind of way about that. They just sort of went with it because they didn't have anything else to do. Now man knew about agriculture. He knew about the ability to, maybe he had tools of war. And so he was able to take things from other people. And so now man had all these decisions to make. He had this toiling to do so that he could, and he also knew that if he didn't do those things, then the tribe could possibly die. And because he now knew how to keep that from happening, he had to make the decision. He felt obligated to make that happen. So now man's toiling. He's not just living in harmony with nature and, letting the whim of nature decide his fate anymore. So it became a much more mentally arduous task to survive. And that happens to every tribe, every civilization. They start in a stage of innocence where everything's easy and they're just sort of coasting on I don't know, their natural abilities. They found an area where they're suited to, and then all of a sudden things get complicated. So that's where we are in America, I think, today, and have been for a long time. Probably 70 years or so. World War II, I think, was the turning point. So now we're in this period where we have a lot of things. We have knowledge of a lot of different ways of life, knowledge of a lot of things we can do. We certainly have all kinds of technology. And now it's time for us to make the decision on how we're going to get back to, or now we can choose which of those things are actually going to lead to our continued success. Now, the point of the story is that it was always inevitable that we were going to eat that fruit of knowledge, and that we'll never get back into the Garden of Eden. We'll never get back to the state of innocence again. But that's okay, because as I said, it was always going to be that way. So now that it is that way, we have the responsibility to make a choice. So, for example, we have the internet, but we don't have to use the internet for porn all the time. We can use the internet to organize. We can use the internet to learn. We have technology, but we don't have to use technology to make war on each other, or we don't have to use technology to isolate ourselves from each other, or surround ourselves with materialism. And yeah, we have great material wealth, but we don't have to use that for individualistic, hedonistic purposes. We can use it to better our collective. So that's where we're at right now. I think we have all the things. We've eaten of the tree of knowledge, and now it's time to get ourselves back to a spiritual way of life. We're never going to get back to where we're just living, like I said, just in a subsistence mode, doing only the things we need to do to survive. And that's okay, because we don't have to anymore. But we can do the things that we need to do to best, to make the most productive, healthiest society. So it's time to choose those things now. So I want you guys to comment below and tell me, because I think that white society, especially now, is very hedonistic, individualistic. We're taking advantage of all this knowledge we have. And it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. But I want you guys to tell me in the discussion today, how do you think we could best do that? How do you think we could convince everyone to get back to traditionalism? Because that's what this video is really about, is getting back to traditionalism, because that's what it ultimately is. Once we gain the knowledge, traditionalism is, yes, there's everything out here, but this is the way that that we're going to best create a healthy society. So how do we convince people to get back to that? I want you guys to comment below. And again, if you guys want me to do a video on a specific topic, I really don't focus on news and stuff like that, but I could talk about those things if you wanted to. So if you want me to do a specific topic, let me know. And until then, I'll see you next time.